So this is from the podcast of Sam Harris. He's talking about Trump's recent assassination attempt, analyzing the rhetoric there, also talking a little bit about Elon Musk and Tucker Carlson.
Okay, well, there appears to have been another attempt on Trump's life, although this one seems to have not been a close call, happily. Also seems to have been another lunatic who, he was ideological, but he was first and foremost a lunatic. At least at the time I'm recording this, that seems to be the case. What to say about this? Well, the first thing to say is that it's a tragedy for our society that we have to worry about political violence of this kind. I think it does say something about our politics, but that would require some fine print to spell out. It certainly says something about unregulated mental illness and the prevalence of guns in our society, and what to do about either of those things remains an open question. I think it's totally irresponsible to politicize the event itself, and the allegation that it was provoked by the rhetoric of Democrats is patently absurd and cynical. Let me just make my view about this crystal clear. The claim that Donald Trump is so outside the norms of our politics so as to put many of our institutions and even our democracy in jeopardy is not a dishonest provocation hoping to incite violent lunatics. It is in fact a sober judgment made by serious journalists and scholars of both parties about the consequences of promoting a malignant narcissist of this sort riding atop a personality cult to the presidency. None of those facts change because a madman or two make attempts on his life. We can't suddenly pretend that Trump is a different person or that Trumpism is a healthier political movement than it is because of these incidents. The way to talk about Trump and Trumpism responsibly is to say what's true, and one truth is that the rhetoric coming from Trump's supporters is far more demagogic and irresponsible than anything that has been said by Democrats before or after these recent attempts on Trump's life. Apparently Elon Musk, genius that he is, tweeted
responsible for the assassination attempts. Realize that Trump's been saying some of the wildest political rhetoric that the country's ever seen in the last 8 years or so. He remembered the chance of lock her up that he would lead about Hillary Clinton. He throws out the word communist all the time. He has said some of the craziest rhetoric out there. Remember the Paul Pelosi incident? Him and his son were laughing about it and making light of it. When he calls the press the enemy of the people, if the press were attacked, would he accept that and say oh yes, I'm responsible for that because of my reckless rhetoric? He wants other people to watch their rhetoric, but then he's not willing to do the same. It's the meaning of hypocrisy.
Difficult questions, and then effectively laundered his reputation in front of their own audiences, if it needed any laundering. Here I'm talking about audiences that are already fairly red-pilled, as far as I can tell, and conspiratorial, at the very least, anti-establishment, to a degree that they're inclined to view any success outside of our institutions to be more or less a sign of virtue. These are audiences that can't figure out what's wrong with RFK Jr., for instance. And they think the Twitter files was the biggest story of the decade. One might even say they have Twitter files derangement syndrome. And of course they think that Elon Musk is fighting the good fight in defense of free speech, without showing any obvious signs of hypocrisy. So this is a flavor of confusion that grows wide-eyed with admiration in the presence of Tucker Carlson. I would say that appearing on these podcasts has been very good for Tucker, and more or less whatever is good for Tucker is almost certainly bad for the world. There's an act that many charlatans and grifters and bumptious little weasels perform, and no one does this better than Tucker Carlson. If you've watched him, you have seen him do this.
By the way, with Elon, I would put a lot of money on it that in the future, historians are going to be very dismissive of Elon over his support of Trump and over some of the weird cultural stuff that he gets involved in. Historians are often very well educated, they're very informed, and even though Elon may be a good engineer, he's going to be looked at as a fraud in many ways. Someone like Sam will probably be viewed more positively in history than someone like Elon.
Many, many times. To begin by emphasizing his own Christian humility, right? He starts with an almost confessional self-awareness of his own imperfections. It's the "there's no greater sinner than I am" routine, right? I've made huge mistakes myself. I'm ashamed of how wrong I was about X or Y or Z. And then with that throat clearing out of the way, you go on to pronounce your absolute certainty on some controversial topic that's the political equivalent of plutonium. Right? This is what Tucker does, whether he's shilling for Putin or the Great Replacement Theory or Kanye or Andrew Tate, or simply delivering the next fresh bolus of insanity that has surfaced somewhere right of center. Now, Tucker might have once been a real journalist. I'm not sure, actually. I think he was almost certainly a talented writer. But he's now a fraud. Of course, that doesn't mean he's wrong about.
I like what Sam's about to say about Tucker Carlson. He highlights how we know he's a fraud because what he's saying doesn't align with what he believes privately. And we can see that with the Fox News, the Fox News case that was going on last year before they settled. Tucker's text messages showed him continually critiquing Donald Trump. But then he would get on the news and he would praise Trump, he would defend him. And so just basically shows Tucker doesn't have principles. He just is doing whatever he thinks his audience wants him to do. Again, Tucker's going to be another person that historically is going to be viewed very negatively at this time. Okay, we're going to look at some of the most egregious things that Tucker has said over time. We're going to watch a video. So this is him basically saying that 𝙊𝒏𝒂𝒊𝒏 didn't pose a threat to anyone. She was trying to get into the chamber on January 6th, trying to get to where the senators were. He's trying to make the case that they should have just stepped aside and let her in. It's wild that he's trying to argue that. And he also tried to say that those that entered on January 6th, they were orderly and meek. It's wild how someone like Tucker can say such crazy things and still be viewed as credible. The idea that he's trying to pass that off is. Let's look at some other crazy things that he said in the past. He's once said that vaccine requirements were like Jim Crow. Okay, he's said before, been very critical of protests against police violence. Okay, he claimed that the concept of white supremacy was a hoax. Claimed that immigration made America poorer, dirtier, and more divided.